Thank you, Tony. Good morning, everybody. Just a quick audio check. Can you hear me in the back okay? Okay, great. Awesome. So I'm executive in charge of financial planning and analytics in Decision Inc. And been doing this particular focused area for the last 22 years. So I've gone through a lot of transitions in finance teams around how they plan and analyze within the business. So I'm going to give you a quick talk about what it is financial analytics is in an organization, and from there move to what the future looks like, what we're expecting to see happen going forward, and what finance and the business need to be ready for. I know we cut for time, so I'm going to keep it quite short, and I can answer any questions that might spark your interest later on after the session. So very quickly, financial planning analytics is it's been focused within finance traditionally. The way finance plans, then the business executes on these plans. We revise the financial outcomes of those, make decisions, and then effectively replan again. In a nutshell, for those of you who don't know much about finance, that's what we mean by financial planning and analytics. And if we break it down into the processes that exist within finance to be able to do that, we have the budgeting process, forecasting process, and modeling processes that exist within a business. From there, once we've executed, we choose which is the plan we're going to be going after, we move into the analyzing of that plan, where this analysis, management reporting plays a big role in that, particularly from a finance perspective, putting those management packs together, as well as statutory reporting and the disclosure of all this information to various stakeholders. So in a nutshell, in layman's terms, at a very high level, that's what we're talking about in the space I deal with. There's a couple of things behind this. These processes and these traditions have really been, let's get this out, really been earmarked from about 50 years ago. We had Russell Ackoff, who got involved in General Electric and a couple of other big corporates. And really what started to be born was this tradition of doing an annual budget, because we had a 12-month predictive window in a business in order to operate. So let's put a plan down for 12 months, and that became a corporate budget per se. Budgets have been around long before that, but it really started to become mainstream around about that time. And what we've done from there is really brought it along with us for the last 50 years. And what it typically looks like within a business is most timelines that incorporate these financial processes that I spoke about would start with 3 to 6 month budgeting cycle, and I'm not joking if I say 6 months. We have got customers who've had those types of budgeting processes before the start of a year. So there would be this whole planning world that would happen, and then we'd move into the reporting and analysis that would happen in month 1 and month 2. Then at the end of month 3 in the next financial year, we'd start potentially a forecasting process, would be the quarterly forecast. And a lot of the times that this planning cycles that we're talking about within business, especially if it's quarterly, in our experience has been with companies that are more on the progressive side of forecasting. There's companies who forecast and plan less than this in businesses. What that really means is that for the progressive companies, they're looking at what their outcomes are likely to be around market conditions, usually about once every 3 to 4 months. They're taking a snapshot of where their company's at with the market and where we're going to. And it creates this whole traditional view of the world is creating two major issues. The first is, if it takes too long to review the past and to get to a point where we now understand what's happened, then it becomes disconnected to the future in terms of what we need to plan. Let me give a quick example. If it takes me 25 days to produce my monthly executive pack, within that 25 days, there is so much that could have changed in the market that history information actually is irrelevant to a decision I need to make going forward. Okay? So that disconnect between what's happening in the past and what's going to happen in the future is one aspect. The second tradition that we've lived with for the last 50 years is we've created an environment where we do time-based planning. So we know budget cycle starts at this date and ends at that date. We then only have to plan again for the next quarter in 3 months' time, so we'll figure out what the plan is then. And then thereafter, the next 3 months and so forth. So we've created time-based planning world within our business areas. And if you have a look at what that actually means, and I'm going to try to relate it back to, we look at what the market is doing today, 2020 up to 2025 world that we live in, versus this 1970s view of the way we plan for our business. And just have a quick look at this. So firstly is, at the end of a budget cycle, we hope that what's happening in the market is in balance with what we have within the budget. So we've planned for what's relevant that's happening out in the market. And those worlds are in sync and life is good. Let's take a quick look at what has transpired in business around us today. So firstly, once we've got that set plan, it's not changing, remember, for the next 3 months. In month 1 of our financial year, we've got a change in exchange rate and a change in oil price. If I'm a business that relies on those particular drivers, that is going to impact decisions I need to make. But I'm not planning for those yet. In month 2, we have load shedding kicking into our environment. If I'm a manufacturer, that could be an important driver for me as a business to be able to take cognizance of that and make a change to my plan. I haven't changed anything yet. My business process hasn't allowed me to do that yet. So I've still got this old budget that's sitting there waiting for me. And then in addition to that, we hit month 3, we got the coronavirus and the unknown unknowns that are going to come about in the market. And it really throws the weighting of what's happening out in the outside world to what we had originally planned way out of sync. What we've done to try counter that going through the 90s and early 2000s was to say, well, let's bring in this concept of a quarterly forecast. And what happens in the quarterly forecast in our business is that we take cognizance of some of the stuff now that has happened, but because it's so difficult to plan, we are not making big changes in the business. We are just telling the business what all of this stuff really is going to mean as an output. And what I mean by that is that if we have to then compare the budget line, which would be the yellow one, and the forecast line, all we're doing from a business perspective and finance perspective is saying, because of the coronavirus, and because of load shedding, and because of the oil price change, this is where we're going to end up. This is how far we're going to miss our plans by. There's very little to no corrective changes made during that planning cycle. So there's a culture of let's just show what is going to happen and we try to work towards that. So effectively what we're saying is we bring in old technology to a modern race. And we can't be in a more modern race than what we are at the moment. We've heard about it the whole of this morning, how rapidly things are changing. But yet from a finance perspective, we're still attacking this race with our old technology, our old way of thinking. Whereas in the modern world, information becomes real time. Changes don't wait for the end of the race to be implemented for the next race. They happen during the race. We get real-time data. Changes are made in this system and in this environment to make adjustments to optimize our performance there and then. And we, as a finance, from a finance perspective, we've got to start looking at changing this world, changing this way of thinking. So we can talk technology all we like, but we also need to talk about methodology and process behind this, around us in this finance world. And the ideal world the first step we should be starting to look for is really if we take, let me just get this up, if we take this picture I had earlier, is to change that and to create an environment where we're making corrective changes as and when is needed along the way. And those changes aren't necessarily always finance related. They are operational decisions in the business that are important that have a financial outcome. And that financial outcome is what we will reflect, but the important part is we're making operational changes. So we want to impact that. So that's the ideal state in terms of where we're going to get to. And for me, this is really the first step of that shift. We've got to be pushing towards that. So what's going to happen between now and 2025? How's financial planning and analytics from a finance perspective going to change? So I wanted to bring this up because there's been some good research happening from a Gartner perspective. And the first thing from a process perspective, Gartner was saying, finance are going to become more of a business partner than they've ever been before. There's been a lot of talk about that in the past, but we've failed to actually execute on that. Finance is going to become more of a business partner because we're going to be operating within the operations and dependent on their changes and decisions on the financial outcome. So we're going to tie those two worlds closer and closer together. In order to do that, finance is going to have to be more agile, more accurate, and the planning in the business is going to be more continuous as opposed to time-based. So the way I describe the time-based process, that is going to become a thing of the past. To be competitive enough in today's changing environment, we're going to have to plan on demand and continuously if necessary. And it shouldn't be a big overhead on the business. From a technology perspective, there's going to be a couple of changes. AI and machine learning in this financial planning analytics space is going to play a bigger role. So 80% of companies are saying that they are going to be using AI and machine learning as well as RPA to help them get through this. 70% of companies are saying that the trend is definitely moving towards this finance hub of creating a budget and a forecast, moving to financial planning analytics is going to start moving to what we call FP&A, extended planning and analytics. That's going to be a big shift. And that extended part means that the operations within the business are actually going to determine the financial outcome. By changing an operational driver and a metric, we're going to see the net profit result of that particular decision. And that's going to be instantaneous based on what's happening with technology. And then the last part, just a technology trend that seems to be happening, and I've already seen it in some of our vendors, is that financial planning analytics, which has traditionally been outside of the ERP and transactional function, is going to start getting embedded into ERP systems. So that's a future play. And there's 50% probability that new ERP solutions are going to have FP&A embedded in them. Okay, so what does that mean? It really means that instead of having time-based plans that are disconnected from what's currently happening around you, we're going to have a backward view of the world, which is going to be much shorter. We're going to be able to pick up on what's happened in the past. That's going to be automated and have a lot of context behind it. And we're going to spend a lot more time looking forward. So once we've got this information that's relevant to a decision, we're going to start testing scenarios and hypotheses in order to make changes at an operational level within the business. So we're going to become more predictive. It's going to be more agile and accurate. And very importantly, it's going to become more continuous. We're going to be in a continuously planning world. And that's a big shift in mindset from the traditional, we do budgets and forecasts within finance. And the sooner we have companies adopting that, the more of a disruptor they're going to be in their space. So in essence, what we're looking to do is to create visibility of the future. And we talk to a lot of financial areas and a lot of our companies' financial teams and the CFOs, and we sell the value of giving the CFO visibility of the future. And for us, it's not only the CFO. We want to give every decision maker some form of visibility as to what the future is likely to look like. And we believe in order to do that, 4 key things have to happen in terms of this transformation process. And I'll talk you through them very quickly. So the 4 things are: information context is going to become critical. We cannot make decisions on information that has no context or no relevance. That's quite critical. We're going to move into continuous planning. I've touched on that a little bit. We're going to get to extended planning. We're going to bring in operations a lot more. Finance and operations are going to become a lot closer than what they're at the moment. And then we're going to start leveraging technology a lot better than what has happened in the past. Intelligence and automation is going to be a driver to give us the certainty of the future in our world. If I just dive quickly into each one, I won't spend too much time here. The first step of information context is, number 1, improving the speed and accuracy of the information we receive. So I used the example 22 days to get an exco pack, or 20 days to get an exco pack, whatever it might be, is way too long. We almost need real-time exco packs being generated from a business as and when it happens. And that could mean at a month-end process, or we could have the idea of a month-to-date view of what our financials are looking like during the month. And that starts to become a real-time view on that. So we're going to be pushing for automation in this process, so that's going to become relevant, as well as narrative context. I think we miss that a lot, that the ability to create narrative context about what's happened is going to become more relevant when we dive into that. The second part is, how do we get to continuous planning? So if we're planning at the level of detail we're at the moment, where we're expecting a human being to come in and interact with millions of records to create an operational plan, it's going to be near impossible, and that's been one of the biggest factors that have held us back. We need to be able to do more higher level top-down driver-based planning that are critical to the business. We may sacrifice a bit of planning accuracy for speed, which is a context that is quite difficult from a finance perspective to wrap your head around. But if we play a 90-10 rule on this, and if we say that if we're 90% accurate, but we gain a lot more speed in order to adjust to the market, so we act quickly, we're going to be in a better place than if we're 100% accurate but a lot slower. Okay. So there's going to be that mind shift. So therefore, top-down driver-based planning is going to become critical. But here's the key. We can use technology to automate the detail. We don't have to have a human do that detail, because that's a task that doesn't add value. But we can use the technology to take the top-down plan and then automate what's going to happen based on what we did on a top-down plan. And that technology exists today, and we can talk through it a bit later. The third thing is we've got to get into extended planning. We isolate finance too much, and the outcome of the financials we isolate too much. And there's too many silos that operate within the business. So we want to get the outcome of finance driven by the operations. Make the necessary volume changes in production, and how is that now going to impact the bottom line, taking all factors into consideration without one person touching it from the time I changed the volume change till the time I looked at my net profit. Okay, so we want to take that manual component out of that. And then lastly, what's quite critical is going to be using AI, ML, and RPA. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotic process automation. I'll talk a little bit about that this afternoon and give you some probably high-level examples of how that could play out. But there's just so much we can do with the new technology to help shift financial planning analytics moving forward. One of the ones that always is probably common sense is the predictive capabilities we can use in AI to help us test what is likely to happen going forward. And help shed light on how we're comparing to what our human management decisions are in that process. We'll talk about that a bit later. So in order to achieve those four objectives, there's really two things that I think can get you going. The one is the technology that is currently incumbent in most financial teams, and the other one is the partner that will help you on this journey. And if I refer back to Nick's presentation earlier, it's more about the journey than the destination. And you want to be able to partner with an agile partner that will help you through the changes along this journey, because the coronavirus is here and now. Who knows what's going to happen in 6 months' time that we need to plan for. And you want to be able to get through that together. So we've got those two. So let me talk to you quickly about the first one. What's holding us back from a technology perspective? So firstly, when the technology structure within the business is we have your ERP transactional based systems which are well organized, they're centralized, they control, they take care of the day-to-day transactional activity that happens in the business. Then on the other end, we have the consumers of information that need information from these systems, and they need to plan on that information and generate views of the world. So what we do is we put these financial planning and analytics processes in between them, and the finance team generally is responsible for running them and making sure they happen. And how do they do that? And those of you in finance would, suppose, relate to this, is we create this world with, and I'm not knocking, sorry, on the Microsoft side, I'm not knocking Excel, I'm knocking spreadsheets here. We have this world where we've got silos of business areas operating with their own spreadsheets to create their own plans and reports and so forth. And they will send the information to you when they're good and ready for you to then process and drive an outcome. And what that makes, it makes a a business that is too slow, it's reactive, it's non-collaborative. It just takes too long, and it's too much effort to take that quarterly plan and make it every month or every week if necessary, because it's just too complicated. So we need to change that space. And there's technology out there today that accommodates for this. And the whole idea behind this technology is allow business to plan at the operational level, but have it integrated and linked to what the outputs of finance are. So make it driver-based. Important operational drivers. Where you change an operational driver, it has a material impact of what's coming out. So if we wanted to change our sales numbers and what we're planning on selling to the market, it must immediately impact production. It must immediately notify that HR are going to have to employ more account executives in order to deliver on this, and so forth and so forth. And all of that has got a financial outcome. And let's see what the impact of that is. So once the change is made, in seconds, I want to be able to see what the output is likely to be. So that's the technology that exists. And really what the whole objective behind this is to improve that information relevance to the user. It must happen fast. So as we make this change, we see it. It gives you that continuous planning output. It gives you that information accuracy. It reduces that risk of information inaccuracies. And what I mean by that is there's been a lot of studies by a lot of the big consulting houses that when you use spreadsheets, like I had in the previous picture, to generate your planning and your reporting environments, there's a 92% probability that they'll have a material error in them. That's a scary statistic because decisions are made off that information. And so you want to get away from that. So you want to reduce that risk. And you want to process time. You want to reduce process time and manual maintenance intervention that comes from the human element. If we move on to the partner world, so what we believe is that having a partner that just understands technology doesn't always solve a problem. And I've seen it too often where clients have implemented a new technology to eliminate that spreadsheet world that exists. And when you look at the end result of what they come out with at the end of that process, they've got this new technology, but guess what? It's surrounded by spreadsheets that different people have to use in order to use that, in order to update. And you've got to get away from that. So you need somebody who helps you understand that that's what we want to move away from. So let's design this thing right. Let's build it right. So we get the most out of it and we can drive that out. So that process and design is important. The technology is important you choose. That's critical. You want those specialist skills. You want to do this quickly. Going back to Nick's comments earlier, those days of the long ERP projects and the long, what we called EPM projects, where we put budgeting systems down and it took 18 months to build a budgeting solution for a client, are over. We're not doing that anymore. We're doing that in a couple of months in order to get a result and then make the tweaks along the way and grow it from there.